Saturday on Melrose Mountain, and the weather is beautiful outside. It's almost midday, and it's not even quite 70 degrees. It's 69.5 degrees outside. Beautiful sun-filled day. Some of the people are down at the beach already swimming, and we're going to be headed that way in just a little bit with the girls and enjoy a little swim in the lake. So we can dive off the dock right in front of our place, or we can go down to the beach where there's white sand that's been brought in, and the water is nice and clean. It's a very, very nice little man-made lake or pond, whatever you want to call it. It's 12 acres, so nice place. Mark chapter 8, verse 34, very appropriate right after the 4th of July or Independence Day, because here Jesus is talking not as we celebrate the Declaration of Independence and our freedom and Memorial Day and Veterans Day, where we count the cost of our freedom. I mean, if you look at the history of America, there's always been a cost for us to have the freedom that we have. And we celebrate 3 very important holidays that acknowledge that cost. Well, Jesus is dealing with the cost of discipleship. And he's got the multitudes and his disciples gathered around him. And the very first thing that he says is, he says, you need to count the cost of following me. He makes 3 points that is involved in the cost. He says, first of all, you have to deny yourself. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have any ice cream, and it doesn't mean that you can't have any fun, but it means that you just don't give in to every whim of the flesh, the sin of the flesh. So you're going to have to deny yourself. The second thing he says is take up your cross. Now, he didn't say take up his cross and be crucified. Whatever job he's given to you, whatever gifts and talents he's given to you to use, he wants you to take up your cross, the things that he's given you to do. So we have to deny ourselves of the flesh. We have to take up our cross, and then we need to follow him, that is, follow his example, living a godly life and doing as the Father in heaven would have us to do. Then he makes an interesting point. He said, if you want to save yourself, you need to lose your life. Now, isn't that interesting? It's a reversal. It says, if you're so interested in saving your life, you'll lose it. But if you lose your life for his sake, not just for other people, but for his sake, then you'll save it. Then finally, he makes another point that says, what is it going to profit you if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Now think about that for a minute. Today in our world, the emphasis is put upon gain of material possessions. And he says, what difference does it make if you gain the whole world but you lose your soul? And then he drives home the point in verse 37 by saying, what is a man going to be able to exchange for his soul? But we don't have anything that we can exchange for our soul, but he did. He gave us his life for our souls, that we could find the forgiveness of sin and have eternal life, soul life. And so he says, there's nothing you could do for it, but I did. And then finally, he says, in this world that we live in, this adulterous and sinful world we live in, if we're ashamed of him, then he'll be ashamed of us when he comes with his angels in glory. Well, I think it's very important to remember that. If we're too ashamed to bow our heads in a public place and pray, if we're too ashamed in a hospital room to pray, if we're too ashamed in a party to say that we're Christians and we don't drink, or we don't do the things that other people do in this world, if we're ashamed of him and his ways, then he'll be ashamed of us. Now, that's really interesting because there are 2 parallel passages, Matthew 16, verses 24 through 27, and Luke 9, verses 23 through 26. And in those parallel passages, we find not only the affirmation of each of the things that we've said here in Mark, but he says, finally, that's not in the Mark passage, he says that he's coming again to recompense every man according to his deeds. Now, the word recompense is really interesting. If you go to the Webster's Dictionary, you'll find there are 2 definitions for recompense. One is to receive payment. So if we've lived godly lives, when he comes, we'll be recompensed. We'll be rewarded for those things that we've done. However, the other meaning of recompense is to have to pay for the wrongs or the deeds that we've done. And those that have not followed him, those that have disobeyed his word, those that have not accepted him, those will be recompensed. Those will be given according to their actions. Very interesting, isn't it? Well, that's your thought for the day. I hope that you have a wonderful 4th of July weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. God bless you. That's your thought for the day.